Welcome to the Joys of Binge Reading, the show for anyone who ever got to the end of a great book and wanted to read the next instalment. We interview successful series authors and recommend the best in mystery, suspense, historical and romance series, so you'll never be without a book you can't put down. You'll find this episode's show notes, a free ebook and lots more information at thejoysofbingereading.com. And now, here's our show.
We're back. We've had a month off over the summer, blobbing out at the beach, but we're now back and raring to go, rejuvenated and wanting to bring you, our audience, the very best of popular bestsellers for irresistible reading. And it's kind of appropriate that while I've been away, Australia's bushfires have been making international news. So our first episode for this year features author Stephanie Parkyn, whose latest book, Joséphine's Garden, explores the excitement and the heartbreak that the discovery of Australian flora and fauna created in 19th century Europe, specifically in the household of Napoleon's Empress Joséphine Bonaparte. Links to all the talking points of this episode can be found on the website, thejoysofbingereading.com. Leave us comments, feel free to just go there and say what you think, or subscribe to future episodes. But now, here's Stephanie. Hi there, Stephanie, and welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Hello, nice to speak with you, Jenny.
Look, I really should be calling you Dr. Stephanie Parkyn, shouldn't I? Because you have got a PhD in science and you had a very interesting career in science before you turned to writing fiction. I'm wondering, how did that transition occur? And was there some sort of epiphany moment, some once upon a time moment when you just knew that you had to write fiction?
Yes, it's I guess I always wanted to. So when I was a little girl, I was writing short stories and poems and things like that from a very early age. But I sort of put that aside while I was doing my school and tertiary education and then working as a scientist. But I just really, it was always there in the back of my mind. So, and I was always making up stories around me, I guess. And I started to get into it again. And the Royal Society had a Manhire Prize for creative science writing. And I thought, well, that sounds like a perfect bit of, something that might be related with me. So I tried to do a bit of my fiction storytelling, and I actually got shortlisted in that prize. So that was a huge boost and encouragement to start writing a novel. And I did start writing a novel while I was working, and that novel has never been published. That's my my trial novel, shall we say? But so I think having it in the background and also that short story prize as a little goal to go for was a bit of an impetus to get back into the writing.
Yes, now you're carving out a niche for yourself in the area of historical fiction with books that very much reflect that scientific background. And can you tell us what has drawn you to the stories that you've chosen to tell?
Yeah, my first novel, Into the World, was I was drawn to it because it was about scientists and it was about that early age of exploration, which seems like such a wonderful time when you didn't really know things about the world. Now we can look it all up online, but then, of course, were traveling to unknown places for the very first time. And when I started looking I was living in Tasmania at the time, and when I started looking at this story of these explorers that had come there and had this interesting, curious interaction with the local Aboriginal people, I found that there was a woman that had disguised herself as a man and journeyed on the voyage, and that was what kicked me into that story, thinking, well, what was her story? How did she end up doing this? So yeah, that was science sort of led me into that, and the botanist and the gardener and that were one of the key characters as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now the newest one is called Joséphine's Garden, and it's a captivating tale of Napoleon Bonaparte's empress and her passion for creating an amazing garden at her country home at Malmaison.
Yes.
How did your interest in Joséphine evolve?
Well, that actually led on from the first one in a way, because the botanist and gardener that I just mentioned, they go on to become involved with Joséphine. So I wanted to see what happened to them at the end of my first novel. And the gardener becomes chief gardener for Joséphine, and the botanist is part of the Jardin des Plantes that end up being sort of botanical rivals with Joséphine. So that was perfect to sort of explore that next phase. The first one was sort of the French Revolution era of France, and the next phase is Napoleon and Joséphine. And I didn't know much about them, other than that it was supposed to be a great love story, but very tragic that they had to part because she couldn't give him a child. And but yeah, so it was looking at those gardeners' lives and realizing that she had this amazing passion for gardening, and that she was maybe a little maligned over time as well. That sort of gave me the impetus to think, oh, there's something here, there's something interesting here as a story. The fact that she was desperately trying to give an heir to Napoleon to keep her place in society, and at the same time trying to grow all these amazing plants from around the world that people were seeing for the very first time. So that was what got me into that one.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that, because in the book, her desire to have a child and her desire to propagate the first blue gums in Europe, they become very much interwoven in the story, and she sees success in her greenhouse with the blue gums, or lack of it, as a portent for what might happen with her own personal fertility. And I wondered how much of that was fact and how much was your own creative license, but it sounds like quite a lot of it was basically historical fact.
Yes, she certainly was very obsessed with growing these plants from around the world. So she would write to sea captains who were going to Australia, and basically she had Napoleon. He sent the Baudin expedition, which came around Australia at that time as well, and she was really keen on getting these seeds back from that expedition, and that's when she gets into this botanical rivalry with the official Jardin des Plantes. But so she was definitely very interested in growing these things. She had wallabies and emus that had been collected on that voyage as well. Just all the different exotic plants from around the world of the times. In regard to the blue gum, I know she was growing a lot of the Australian plants, the eucalypts and the acacias and things like that for the first time in Europe. And with the blue gums, I can't actually remember how much I absolutely knew or how much I inferred, but I knew that Labaladiere, for instance, that's the name of the botanist, he named and officially described the blue gums for the first time. And because I was including him in the story, and because he and the gardener had found them for the first time for European audiences, I guess, European eyes, I knew that that would have been a very important species for them to try and grow. And there was hints in the records that I read that there definitely was a rivalry between the two, Jardin des Plantes and Joséphine, because the Minister of Marine actually had to intervene at the time and sort of sort out who was going to get the specimens. So there was a little hint of there was definitely something there. And then I just extrapolated from that, really.
Both of your heroines, both Joséphine and the girl in Into the World, Marie Sheridan, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Marie-Louise Sheridan, yeah. They're both very strong, independent women, sort of willing to do things that are a little bit outside of the normal range. What did you find particularly engrossing about Joséphine as you got more into her character?
Yeah, well, it was an amazing rags to riches sort of story for her. She really had some struggles in her life that I found fascinating as well. And the fact that she was sent to Paris as a 16, 15-year-old to marry a man that she didn't know. He despises her when she gets married him. He ends up putting her in a convent, separates her from her children, or one of them at the time. And later she manages to divorce him, but then later she gets put in prison during the Reign of Terror because he was put in prison. So she nearly loses her head at that in that stage of history as well. And then she goes on to meet all these new leaders of France and be sort of escalated into Napoleon's realm. And, so she carries on up to become an Empress of France from starting as a colonial girl from Martinique sent to Paris when she was only a teenager. So she had an amazing backstory. And I also she must have been so determined to achieve what she did with the garden at Malmaison as well. The fact that she built these big glasshouses for the first time in Europe, and she has sort of been a bit maligned, her as a prostitute, which came out of the English propaganda of the time as well. But she certainly was like a A-list celebrity party girl of the time when she first met Napoleon. And at these parties, anything would go, sort of thing. So she certainly had a risque past, but she's been sort of thought of as either a prostitute or that her interest in botany was more about just the prettiness of the flowers. But if that was the case, then why would she have tried to grow all these unusual things from seeds from around the world that she wouldn't know whether or not they were going to be pretty flowers or not? You know, I think there was more to her than had been sort of projected over time.
Yes, yeah. And it's kind of poignant what's happening now with the Australian fauna just in this last few months, the terrible fires that they've had there. I wondered if you sort of saw any kind of irony in the fact that, you know, they were so celebrated in the 19th century, and yet now they're facing virtual destruction. What's your thoughts in response to the crisis that's going on there?
Yes, it's so terrifying and catastrophic, and especially when the fires are going into wetter rainforesty areas that are not as acclimatized to dealing with fire regimes. So those are the times when I was living in Tasmania, parts of the forests there that were wetter forests burnt, that, you know, they won't come back as quickly as the more dry eucalypt areas. And I was actually living in Australia back in the time and when the Black Saturday fires came through, and people then were trying to say, climate change is going to make these fires worse, but nobody wanted to listen then, and it was a sort of a backlash to anyone that tried to bring that up. And, you know, people are still trying to say now, you know, this is going to be the future. If we don't do something about climate change, there's going to be more fires and more loss. And, so it is a scary time, and it'll be interesting. I'm going book touring in February through mainland Australia, and it'll be quite sobering, I think, to drive through some of those areas. Yeah, it'll be an interesting time.
Yes, I know that for people who aren't living in our part of the world, you're in the Coromandel, and I'm between Auckland and the Coromandel, but we've both experienced these weird skies that we've been having since Christmas. I must admit, I chose one Sunday afternoon to have friends up for drinks, and the sky, it was looking really weird. I was thinking, what's happening? Is it going to rain? And then I realised that the sky was kind of going a yellow colour, and I realised it was the fires.
Yeah.
And in other parts of New Zealand, we've had sort of orange skies, haven't we?
Yeah, it was really freaky that day. And I, imagine it's way worse for people in Australia that are closer to the fires. But just the fact that it's come all that way across the ocean, and it rolled, it really rolled in, didn't it? And it covered us all, and that orange glow, and you see the global effect, really, don't you?
You do, and also. In the morning, the sun was rising with a blood red sun. I tried to photograph it, but it just didn't come out on my phone. But it was a real blood red sun rising in the morning. It was quite weird. It did have an apocalyptic effect.
Yeah, and everything gets this strange glow. The sun, even now it's not quite crisp and clear, is it? Everything is a bit hazy.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Just turning back to Malmaison, what can you see at Malmaison today, and have you had the chance to visit there? Is it somewhere you can visit now?
Yes, it is. So you can visit the house, the chateau that she lived in, and it's now a museum. So you can see everything that she would have owned as well, the way she decorated it. One of the things that she did do was spend a lot of money on redecorating things. So it is preserved. You can walk around the music room and the bedrooms, and that's fabulous to see. Unfortunately, the gardens are pretty much non-existent anymore, not to the extent that they would have been when she was there. She had 300 acres. Now most of it's been subdivided up for the local town, and so it's all a much closer to the town, and it's nestled in that a bit more. But it's still possible to visit and get a real sense of what it must have been like to be her.
Yeah, and I gather that a lot of their love letters are still available. How did you go about your research for Joséphine in particular, and where did you find your best leads?
Yeah, so the letters of Napoleon to her have been preserved because she kept them all, and they've been published. So that was brilliant, translated and published. So I did get to read all of those, and there has been a lot of historians that have written about them. So that was a great start to getting into the era and the story of those two people. So I read a lot of different books about them to form my own opinion of who they were and what their characters were. And some of because my other characters are more unknown, there was fortunately the botanist that I mentioned. I have his own journal from the expedition that he went on that I've written about in Into the World. So I've got a real sense of who he is from his own words, which is an amazing resource to have, and a little bit also for the gardener in that respect. And just the internet is an amazing resource for us now because you can source so much and freely available. So some of the sort of tell-all expose records of people that knew Napoleon and Joséphine, their memoirs are available and translated online. And so I just read widely to begin with. And I had a few specific things that were a bit about the unknown people. And then I just start to write. And when I need to know something specific, I'll Google it and see what comes up.
Yeah. Look, perhaps just turning away from the individual books to looking a little more widely at your career. You've mentioned about your time in Australia and your science career. Tell us a little bit about your life before writing and how it's fed into your writing. We have covered that a little bit with the scientific, but how long were you in Australia, and you grew up in New Zealand, I think, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. I was born in Christchurch, and I did all my schooling and university mostly down there. And then I worked as a scientist at NIWA for about 15 years, and also did my PhD at the University of Waikato. And after that, I've always sort of wanted to do writing, as I mentioned, but also art. So we had the opportunity to move to Australia, and I chose to not really try and get a science job at that point. I thought I will try to further my art career and also the writing. So that's what I did. While I lived there for 10 years, I got involved in a local art gallery, and I concentrated on writing my first novel. So, yeah, so a complete change. Mostly before I went to Australia, I was in science, and then when we went there, I tried a few different things that I'd always wanted to give a go. And fortunately, the writing has worked out, and I'm now doing that pretty much full time.
Now, for those who don't know, NIWA is one of the agencies in New Zealand that handles weather. So I guess that means you've actually got a pretty in-depth understanding about all of these weather events and climate change.
Yeah, I was a freshwater ecologist. So
okay. Yeah.
Not on the climate side of thing, but definitely we worked with people alongside us who were climate scientists. So it's an interesting place to learn a lot about different sciences going on. That's for sure, because we were freshwater, marine, and climate. Yeah.
You mentioned about your art. Were you actually practicing as an artist, like painting or drawing?
Yes, that's right. I did pastel art mainly, pastel paintings. But yep, I was exhibiting, and I still have a few art pieces around the place.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Look, if there's one thing that you've done more than any other to attribute your success as a writer, what would you think it would be?
Oh, that is a really hard one. I think it's probably persistence, really. Just the length of time that it takes, just sticking at it, because it took me 7 years to write the first novel, and it took a long time to get it published as well. So it's all that sort of stickability, really. Eventually,
yes.
You know, if you work hard and you work at it and you work at the craft, and then, just keep persisting, no matter the number of rejections.
Turning to Stephanie as reader, because this is the Joys of Binge Reading, and it's predicated a little bit on series reads. I found it interesting that your two books are very much linked, although they're not published specifically as a series, but it's lovely that the story can be carried through. Yep. Who do you like to binge read, and have you got any recommendations for our listeners about who you'd think would be great for them to try now?
Oh, that's interesting. What was actually got me back into reading in terms of a series was the Harry Potter series, funnily enough. But when that came out, it was sort of that time when you had to wait for the next one to come out, which has been, I hadn't had that experience for a long time, or maybe ever, with reading. So with the Harry Potter one, my husband used to joke, oh, yeah, you'll be lining up at the bookstore with all the kids in their capes and wands. So that one actually got me back into that joy of waiting for the next one to come out, being so involved in those characters. And these days I actually seem to read more one-offs, but I do like that. I like that TV series Poldark, so I should try the books of that. And also people have been recommending to me the Outlander series of books, which I haven't read yet either. But in terms of series, those are the ones I've been thinking I should delve into.
Yes. Also, people, though, even without having exactly series, people often they discover a reader and an author, and they like to read everything by that author. Have you got some favourite authors like that you, apart from J.K. Rowling that you like to
Yeah.
read everything that they write?
Yeah, there's an English author called Hilary Mantel. Hilary Mantel,
yes.
sorry, yes, everyone probably knows her, but also Michelle Lovrick. And I read one of hers called The Book of Human Skin, and then I was captivated and had to go back and find all of her other ones. She has things called The Floating Room. She writes a lot about Venice. It's all historical, and I really love those. They are sort of very poetic descriptions, but strong poetic descriptions, just really surprising, and great characters too. So Michelle Lovrick is one that.
And what era?
1700s, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's amazing how many good writers there are around. You know, even though I've been doing this podcast for 2 years, and I'd say probably at least 50% of the people we have on are historical fiction writers, but nobody's mentioned her name to me before, and she sounds as if she'd be really good. But there's lots of undiscovered treasures out there, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I chanced upon her by winning that book at a raffle or something. So, you know, just those sorts of strange things. And then I really seek them out whenever they get published now.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, sort of coming around, we're starting to come to the end of our time together. So just taking a look back over your writing career, at this stage, if you were doing it all over again, is there anything that you would change? And if so, what would that be?
Probably not in terms of my life experiences, because I think it was great that, you know, I really enjoyed my science career, and I really enjoyed trying art, and, you know, just adding all these different things to your life experience before you go to write, because it's kind of like it's an outpouring of stuff that you've accumulated in your life experience that comes out on the page. The major thing for perhaps other writers that I've learnt was just that process of trying to get published. The first time I tried to do that with my first book, it took me about 3 years of individually pushing that, and I learnt a lot about going the right way. I did things the wrong way, and I learnt more about how I should have done it when I did actually get my first book published. So, yeah, there's all that learning, but you can't help that. You know, that's all part of life, and the things that you pick up along the way. And, yeah, but no, so there's nothing really that I would change, I don't think.
Who are you published with now?
Allen and Unwin.
Oh, great. Yes, they're a well-known Australasian, very well-known Australasian company.
Great having them both in Australia and in New Zealand. So there's great teams that are helping me there, yeah.
So what is next for Stephanie the writer? I know you've mentioned you're going on a book tour to Australia in February. Tell us a bit about where you'll be in that tour. This will be being published probably late January, or just very early February. So what are some of your dates there? Where are you going?
Going to Melbourne in Feb 4th. That starts it off. Then I'm going through to sort of Warrnambool along the coast, and then through to Adelaide, Canberra and Sydney, around the Sydney area, and hopefully up the coast towards Brisbane a bit as well. So that's so that's some of the major ones. Adelaide is 11th of Feb. Canberra is a few days after that, and Sydney around the weekend of the 15th of Feb. But all that should be on my website soon.
Great. And what about works in progress? Have you got anything else that you've got on your typewriter, so to speak?
Yes. So, and in speaking about series, it's another third one that is connected to these other two. So in the first novel, the first scene starts with my heroine has to give up a child to go on this voyage. She's an illegitimate mother, and she's been abandoned by her family, and her choice is to give up her child and disguise herself as a man and flee the wrath of her family. And in the third book, I'm writing the story of the boy. So this is her child that she gave up. So it's what happens to him ultimately and how he reconnects with his mother. So, yeah. So in terms of series, it's great to keep some of those characters going. And, yeah, they feed into each of the books, even if they're standalone stories.
That's fantastic. And how much of that one is historically accurate?
It's based at the time when Napoleon's reign is ending. So it's my character, the boy, is grown up when you first meet him, and he's a storyteller, and he's a traveling storyteller, and he's been moving through these areas that are French owned at the moment because Napoleon's empire is there, but the empire is crumbling and they're having to get out because the Russians and Prussians are starting to reclaim the areas of their own. So that's the sort of true facts of the time that are happening, and then my characters are all made up within that. But the true dates and those sorts of things of what battles were happening and where things were changing will be historically accurate. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, that sounds as if it would be great fun. When will that one be
Well,
published?
I've just finished the first draft, so it's still got a few more drafts to go before I feel I can even show it to anyone. So I'm hoping another couple of years, and it should be out on the shelves. Let's hope.
That's lovely, Stephanie. Now, look, do you like interacting with your readers? And I presume that if you do, apart from these tours, it would be online. How do people find you online? And do you have a place where you like to talk to readers?
Yes, I am on Facebook and on Instagram. So Facebook, I have a page called Steph Parkyn Story Place, and Instagram is just under my name, and all that should be on my website, which is stephanieparkyn.com. So love to, and love meeting people in the flesh as well at different events. So, yeah.
That's lovely. And we'll have full show notes of this. We publish a full transcript of our podcast interviews as a blog, and we'll put links to those, all of those particular places in the show notes so that if people want to, they can find them that way as well.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you.
Well, look, it's been marvellous talking. It really has. And I wish you all the very best with your book tour in the States, in Australia. It sounds like that coast that you're going down is one of the areas that's been quite heavily hit. So you definitely will see some of the devastation, I think, on that trip.
Yes, Coffs Harbour and Lismore, they all had the first brunt of fires, I think. Yeah, so those are places I'm going to as well.
Okay, Stephanie. Well, look, all the very best, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks for listening to the Joys of Binge Reading podcast. You can find all the details and links for this episode at www.thejoysofbingereading.com. We'd love to hear your comments and suggestions for who you'd like us to interview next. And if you enjoyed the show, take a moment to subscribe on iTunes or a similar provider so you won't miss out on future guests. Thanks for joining us, and happy reading.
The Joys of Binge Reading podcast is put together with fantastic technical help from Dan Cotton and Abe Raffles. Dan is an experienced sound and video engineer who's ready and available to help you with your next project. Seek him out at dcaudioservices@gmail.com. That's D for Daniel, C for Charlie, audioservices@gmail.com, or check our show notes. He's fast, he takes pride in getting it right, and he's great to work with. Our voiceovers are done by Abe Raffles, another gem of sound and screen. Abe has 20 years of experience on both sides of the camera/microphone, as a cameraman director and also as a voice artist and TV presenter. I think you'd agree that his voice is both light-hearted and warm. He is super easy to work with no matter what the job. You'll find him at Abe, A-B-E, at pointandshoot.co.nz. As I say, the full details in the show notes on the website. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. Hopefully see you next week. Bye.